Yeah, we were looking at bikes today, looking at something to do, and I wanted to do something with the Sport Chief, but then Rob made the recommendation, take the Scout and the Chief out, the regular Chief. And as I'm looking at them and, you know, just kind of refreshing on some of the specs and stuff, I'm like, wow, these bikes could not be any more different. And they truly are. Today we're looking at the Indian Chief and the Indian Scout. And when it comes to two mid-weight cruisers, if you will, I'm going to tell you the differences between each, including the pros and cons. And then I'm also going to tell you which bike I like the best and why. And it may surprise you as to which bike I actually like the best. Man, these things are totally different. Let's go ahead and jump right in. And all this is big thanks to American Biker in Lassie, South Carolina. Big thanks to these guys for letting me come out and take a look at these two brand new Indians. If you need a new Indian, used Harley, or any of the many vehicles they have, come talk to Rob at American Biker again. Thanks for the continued support, where I get to come out and actually test and review these two awesome Indian motorcycles. So let's start with the similarities. There's not many. Yeah, basically the same cluster, neither a ride command, and the mirrors both sit up on the top. That's pretty much it. So we're gonna have a lot of differences here to cover between these two bikes. Let's start up at the front. On the Indian Chief, you have LEDs all the way around. That looks like an FTR light to me, to be honest with you. On the Scout, it's a mixture. So up front, it's all halogens. In the rear, they do have a nice LED lamp, but again, you have halogen turn signals. On the Chief, you have more of the bobbed fenders, right? So they're chopped, look really cool, kind of a modern look, or kind of a callback to the old days of bobbers in a way, even though this one is not the bobber. The Indian Scout actually has full fenders, front and rear. The wheels are different on them, obviously different tires as well, but you have a 19-inch wheel on the Chief, you have a 16 on the Scout. The seating position is different, and really this is pretty much all about the handlebars. They both have forward controls. It looks like the ones on the Scout may be a little bit more forward, but either way, with these drag type of bars, with this little bit of a rise to them, maybe a 4-inch rise, you have more of an aggressive stance. I'm not totally bent over the tank, but my arms are stretched out, and I'm kind of just ready to rip into the corners almost on this bike, whereas on the Scout I have a much more comfortable stance. So again, yeah, those controls definitely feel more forward on this bike. They do make reduced reach controls too. Not sure which one this one has, but regardless, the bars are more swept back. Now I'm just referring to this Scout. There's a lot of different Scouts, but you know, pound for pound, I think these two represent this video well. So more of a swept back look, and I'm more just straight up on the bike. Some of those other riding things we'll talk about when I actually take them down the road. I've ridden both of these bikes extensively, so if there's something you're like, man, he didn't talk about that, remember I have videos on both of these bikes and several different versions of each as well. Both of these bikes are made for shorter riders, 25.6-inch seat height on the Scout, 26 on the Chief. So you got a 3.3 gallon tank on the Scout, you got a 4-gallon tank on the Chief. Chief has more of a teardrop design. This one is obviously a little bit different, kind of looks like a teardrop, but just a different design, different body lines all the way around. One similarity I didn't mention between the two bikes, they both have preload adjustable rear shocks and 2-into-2 pipes on the one side. A little bit different pipes, but still, those are a couple of more similarities between the two. But one of the biggest differences between these two bikes is the engine. On the Chief, you have a 111 Thunderstroke, which is air and oil cooled. On the Scout, you have a liquid cooled 69 cubic inch motor, and they could not be any more different when it comes to the numbers and the motor themselves. Whereas the Chief is a torquey motor, right? You have 108 foot-pounds of torque at 3,200 RPMs. This one is 72 foot-pounds of torque at 5,900 RPMs. So that affects the way they ride so much differently, where the Chief is quick off the line. This one is pretty quick all the way through. Once you get off the line and get up to speed, this one is very quick. It's got 100 horsepower compared to 80. So like I said, when you ride these two bikes side by side, you can really tell the difference between them in the way they deliver the power. One thing I've always said I'd like to see is like the 108 Power Plus that they put in the Challenger in the Chief. I think that would just be an amazing machine. It already is, but that would make it even more incredible. Both bikes are relatively light, so when you go to back them up, like I'm doing right now, with the short seat height, really makes moving these bikes around a heck of a lot easier than something like a Road Glide or one of the big touring motorcycles. This one's got an odd position to it, but what's not odd is the way it actually rides. It's got really good low end torque. I'm in third gear. When you look at my seating position, I just feel like I'm on top of the bike, right? I'm not sitting in it. It's got an interesting feel to it, you know? I'm slightly bent over the tank, and really it has a lot to do with these bars and the way these pegs are positioned. I don't know if these are the reduced reach controls, but I would much prefer to have these controls, you know, like where the Scout is. It just feels kind of cramped to me. But there is no denying the torque of this motor. It's impressive. We got our ride modes right here. Cylinder deactivation. We click and hold. That'll take us to standard, touring, or sport. And whenever you come to a stop, that's when you'll feel that throttle change, depending on what you want to do. LED lighting on this motorcycle, so much better lighting on this one than the Scout, no doubt about that. I feel like the leverage on the bars is a little odd, right? If you're doing low speed stuff, I don't like the way the bars are positioned. You know, it's just got an awkward feel to me. But in a straight line, this thing will move. It's interesting because bikes like the Fat Bob have a drag bar, but the way that bike is set up, it makes it where you're almost still straight up. You don't lean as much on that bike as you do this one. It's just really different. Change it to sport mode. That really helps to wake up that throttle. A buzzy little motor at third gear, you get it to fourth gear, it starts to smooth out. I actually like the Thunderstroke. I think it's a really awesome and torquey motor. I would be curious if we had a different set of bars on this thing, more forward controls, how different this video may be. And also with that 108 Power Plus, how really different this conversation may be. Liquid cooled to liquid cooled. But it is really a fun kind of bike. You know, there's just a couple of things that I'd really have to change if it were mine. By the way, you have a digital tachometer, analog speedometer. That is what it is. 6-speed transmission on this one too. This is what this bike is made for though, man. Just ripping around town, bike nights, going on shorter rides with your buddies. This bike is made for it. You hit the power button on this bike, it turns off. Yeah, it's just got a different feel to the bike. And I like I said, handlebars, more forward controls. This would be a really nice setup. These two things just kind of hurt this bike for me personally, but how much better is the Indian Scout when it comes to those things? We're about to find out. By the way, both bikes, you can get them with ABS. Turn this on, turn the key, neutral, start it up. Man, the Chief feels light. This feels ultra light. I thought we threw it in the first gear. I guess we didn't. Yeah, you can feel that torque. Instantly, you can feel it. We were in third gear before at 55. And the Thunderstroke is kind of buzzy and vibrating, but this one really is not. This one's smooth all over. You can see my seating position, my back straight up, my arms are down low. Now, don't get me wrong, these aren't the best handlebars in the world. Aftermarket bars or something be super important, but just straight from the factory, I feel much more comfortable on this bike. I feel like my position is more comfortable. And all in all, it's just got a really nice feel to it, man. Yeah, it doesn't get up to speed as quick as the Chief, but it still does pretty good because you got less weight. That's scary how many people you see just not even looking at the road, just driving right along. It's unbelievable, man. Yeah, this bike just feels way more natural to me. Then again, I wouldn't want to put a passenger on this bike. I know it's set up for it. I just don't know that I would want to do that. It's too light. I tried that on my Iron 883, which has like half the power of this one, granted. You know, keep that in mind, but that was uncomfortable. Yeah, I like this much more. As far as the seating position, it just has a great feel to it. It's got a whiny little sound to it. So exhaust is a definite. They even have different fuel caps. So this one obviously right here, Chief is on the side, more like a soft tail. Yeah, this one's better up in the higher RPMs, but it still is no slouch. Obviously, I would do a set of handlebars on this bike. I would also do LEDs up front, for sure, and your turn signals. Handlebars, bring these up a little bit. The way they sweep back is fine, but they're just a little bit too low. Yeah, I think I picked a winner. I think I have. By the way, I do appreciate how they put the cluster here. Even though you still got to look down to see it, at least it's not on the tank. I understand why Harley does that, by the way, but it's just more convenient to have it here as opposed to here. Another thing that's interesting about the bikes is the ground clearance. On this bike, it's 5.7 inches. On that one, it's like 4.9. So you actually have a 28-degree lean angle on the Chief. You have a 30-degree lean angle on the Scout. You also have a side-mounted license plate compared to the one that's right under the fender on the Scout. So the aesthetics of the two bikes, this one lends itself, more to solo riders, bike nights and that type of thing. No provisions for a passenger at all, where you do have at least a passenger pillion and you have the pegs on that bike. Now, one thing that's interesting about these two bikes is when we're talking about the way they deliver power, that really to me says everything. This one's 670 pounds. That one is like 560 pounds, right? So not only do you have a 100-pound difference between the two, you got more horsepower on that one, where this one will actually give you riding modes. So you can open that throttle a little bit more, make it a little bit more sensitive when you put it in sport mode. They really are wildly different when you ride them. And so this is what it comes down to me. Riding position, more comfortable on the Scout. We may have to revisit this though, because the Sport Chief is a much more comfortable bike for me. But when it comes between these two, that one wins as far as riding position. When it comes to power, I actually prefer the Chief. I like that low end torque. It's like a Harley or some of the other Indians. And for me personally, I don't really care about excessive speed. I care about getting up to speed quickly. And that's what this bike delivers. Now, if I was gonna buy a bike for the mountains or the twisties, I'd probably go with the Scout though. 30-degree lean angle, I guess, isn't the best thing in the world, but it's still better than 28 degrees. And so that one to me is more fun. It's more comfortable. Even though I like the power delivery on this one better, overall, for a little bit less money, I really like the Scout. Compared to the regular Chief, I think that's the one that I would go with comparing these two models. Now, if I have a passenger and you don't want to make her mad and you don't want her to leave you, I'd probably go with the Chief and put some provisions on the bike for her, because with that extra weight and low end torque, I think it'll make carrying a passenger much more comfortable on this bike than this one. So it really depends on what I'm going to do. But if I'm just going at it as a solo rider, riding in the twisties, a commuter back and forth to work, I think the Indian Scout is actually the better of the two bikes. That's my opinion on it, man. I like both of them. The aesthetics, I like a little bit more on the Chief, but I think all the way around, I would take the Indian Scout. I'd love to hear your opinion on both of these bikes. Let me know down below. If you like this video, maybe you'll like one of these other ones that I've done here recently. See you on the next one. And as always, hold them down.